Adam, what do you see? I mean, you're out there in the workforce. I mean, you're hanging around, people that don't necessarily have a Christian worldview. What do you hear out there?
Well, I had my first child when I was 22, and I wasn't living perfect, and I had lots of friends that were in the world, and when I was telling them that I had a child coming, they treated it like a death sentence. They did. They're like, man, they were giving me condolences, like oh, his life's over, But here they are, living free, single, young. I mean, no bills, no responsibilities, going out and partying all the time. So to them, that life is over. So they treat it like it's like this terrible thing that's going to happen. And 22 is a little bit young, but I tell you what, it makes you grow up in a hurry, and I wouldn't go back to those days for nothing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I look at the people that are now that I'm 30, and I have friends in their young 30s, and some of them are still living that lifestyle, and it just looks so empty. It is so empty to me. I can't. It's sad to see almost at this point. I look at that as a tragedy.
All right, now Preston said something, but I like it. I think that sometimes that view, I think of, we don't want kids, they're a hassle. It's that selfish view.
Yes, it is.
That it affects me having fun.
Yes.
And all right, now I preached. I know I bring this up every now and then, but I remember I preached a series at church on taking up your cross and following the Lord, and that the cross was an instrument of death. And to somewhat illustrate what that meant, I said there are other instruments of death in your life, and let me explain them to you. Number one, marriage is an instrument of death. It's supposed to kill you. And everybody went, oh! But I said, it's supposed to kill the selfishness in you.
That's right. Absolutely.
And if you don't let marriage kill you, you're liable to kill your marriage.
Yes.
I said the second instrument of death that you would be very acquainted with is children, because children get your mind off of you. Mm-hmm. And now we're just throwing out, maybe we're doing a little bit more preaching, if I could say it that way, than we do in some of these programs. But it's interesting, Jesus made a statement that if maybe we could bring it in the light of what we just said. It says, a man who loses his life or is willing to let go of his life will gain life. But a man who holds on to his life will lose life. And I think part of the thing is one of the things children do is help you get rid of your agenda, your stuff. I want this. I want to buy this. I want this for me. I want to have fun. And then that's really when you begin to start living, when you start giving and giving to others. Now, David, what have you seen?
Probably the same thing, and I agree with what you said about being selfish, because I wouldn't have said it myself, but it was all about me. And then I got married, and then it's all about us. And I had my stuff, she had her stuff, and eventually we were kind of splitting up. And then we had children, and it brought us together, and just the two of us working together to raise those children bonded our marriage even closer. When I had my biological children, that was 35 years ago, and back then it wasn't a death sentence. Back then it was a good thing. But 20 years after that, when I adopted these two little girls, everybody thought, your kids are grown and ready to leave the house, and now you're saddling yourself with two more kids? What's the matter with you? But by raising those first two kids, I knew that they were a blessing.
Yes.
Okay, that was going to bless my marriage, and not only that, it was going to bless these two children that were going to be raised in a not good situation. We're going to bring them into a better situation. I'm not a bit sorry, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Man, I like that. Now, one of the things, now I think, Preston, you said, nowadays people just want one or maybe two children. It's interesting, and just that view, it's amazing. And I'll talk some statistics for a second. That view, I've seen studies that are now saying that Western culture, first of all, in Europe, Western culture will totally disappear within 50 years. They say because to maintain a culture, their views, their somewhat, their history, their I want to say the things they do over and over again, their way of doing things, seeing things. To maintain a culture, you need a birth rate, I think, of about 2.5 children per childbearing woman. And if you don't maintain that, eventually that culture is going to decline. I think at 2, it takes so much, it's recoverable. I think it's something like 1.5. When you get 1.5 children, I think, Press, you said something like maybe 1.5. Once you get that type of birth rate, you are going to lose your culture. You cannot even get it back. In most of Europe today, which I hear a lot in the United States, people saying we want to become like Europe, we want to become like France. Well, their worldview, if I could say it this way, their way of looking at children and family, their worldview has affected them to such a degree they are destroying their culture.
Yes.
They are wiping out their culture because their birth rate is not going to keep up. And what's happened, and this is, and I know I'm maybe getting a little bit political here, the Muslims already look at Europe as their continent because their women are having 6 to 7 children per childbearing woman, and the European culture is maybe having 1.5 per childbearing woman, and eventually in 50 years, Western culture in Europe will be totally gone, and it will become a Muslim culture, all because of the birth rate and how they see children, because children are a hassle. It affects my being able to have fun. I mean, I've even heard some ladies say, I don't want to have a child because it'll mess up my figure. You know, and so I'll tell you something. Age will mess up your figure anyway. Gravity still works. Now we're going to come back, and I know I've just thrown some things out, but I think in the United States now, I'll make another political statement. And sorry for getting political. But the truth is, and I'm not making a total statement here, but the truth is, in the United States of America, we would be in trouble in our culture if it wasn't for the Hispanics and the immigrants and even the illegals that are coming across. If it was not for them, our birth rate per childbearing woman would be about 1.7.
But it would be in decline.
Yeah, we would be in decline as a culture if it were not for the Hispanics that have came to this country. That bumps our birth rate up at about 2.1, 2.2. So this, and we're going to talk about this some more, this is more than just, these Christian guys, these guys are nuts, they're old-fashioned. No, it's, as Preston was saying, studies and statistics show that what we're saying is right. We'll be back in a few moments and continue this talk on For Men Only.